Thanks, Neil. Thanks for that. And I really love your idea of being able to decline meetings. I think it's a skill maybe we'll all need to develop in the next little while. Um, so look, I'm going to pick up on many of the themes that both Neil and Julian have raised already, all under the umbrella of future of work. And in my work at Aon in Human Capital Solutions, this whole idea of the future of work and trying to create some clarity and understanding of the future of work is probably the biggest and most important topic that our clients are coming to talk to us about. So I just thought today I would share some of our own thinking and our approaches with our clients to help them through this challenge. So if you could go on to the next slide, please, Brian. I think that when we look at the world of work, there's no doubt that change is constant and has been constant over the last number and many years. But what's unique about what's happening at the moment is that the change that we're experiencing is significant and it's fast, but it's also hitting us in three different areas. It's hitting us in terms of where we work in the future, what we do in the future, and how we do that. And so I'm going to deal with all three of those, because in order to be able to build a resilient, sustainable workforce, it's really important to provide as much clarity as possible around those three fundamental components of the future world of work. And so if you look at the right-hand side of my slide, that's all about the where we work. And more we're hearing these headlines from different organizations about what their future working model is. And everything from Goldman Sachs CEO talking about working from home being an aberration, and the sooner everybody can come back into the office, the better, because that's the way that they thrive as an organization, right through to Spotify saying that they let employees work from anywhere while still paying the likes of San Francisco, New York type salaries. So you've got every extreme of working model and lots of different headlines around it. And that, I suppose, is making organizations nervous in a way, but also recognizing the need to decide what their own preferred working model is. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the where in a few minutes. In terms of the what, there's some statistics there that the World Economic Forum has identified that 14% of the global workforce will need to change occupational category by 2030. This is as a result of things like the digital revolution, the impact of automation, and the whole creation of new roles. And that there's an estimation that 9% of the global workforce in 2030 will be in occupations that don't currently exist. And that 2030 does not feel that far away. But when you think about it, even just a few years ago, there weren't roles such as, virtual reality consultant or YouTuber, as my children now seem to aspire to be. And that automation itself is likely to displace about 800 million jobs by 2030. So what we do in the workplace is also going through a fundamental change. And then finally, a couple of thoughts around how we work. And more organizations, in a study that Aon carried out recently, 83% of organizations globally are saying that diversity, equality and inclusion is going to be very or extremely important in how they define their own future of work. And that compares with only about 48% of organizations saying that what their competitors are doing is important for them as they define future of work. So what that is saying is that organizations recognize they need to build the right future for themselves and their colleagues and their workforce, not necessarily just looking at what competitors are doing. And then finally, when we look at hybrid working, and both Neil and Julian have outlined and recognised that most workplaces are going to have at least some level of hybrid working, that in itself is going to drive the need for different types of leaders and making sure that we create sustainable leaders that will succeed and thrive in the new environment. So that, I suppose, is just the where, the what and the how. And I was just going to briefly talk through some of our approaches and our learnings under each one of those. So Brian, if you could go to the next slide, which is about getting the future working model right. This is the where. And the feedback from organizations is really saying that getting that model right is critical. And the factors that they're thinking about are things like company culture and talent availability. So making sure that the model is attractive so that people will want to work for that organization while not diluting who they are as an organization as well. So they're the two critical factors. And our approach really is to take a data-driven approach. So looking at two main sets of data in trying to work out what is the ideal working model for you, your organization and your workforce going forward. The first is looking at the roles itself and the tasks within that role and working out what is the best environment. So what roles need to be done on site that need collaboration, innovation, creativity and so on, versus what are the tasks that are better done working from home, for example, analysis, report writing, those kind of things. So we have a model that can run the different roles of an organization through the model to work out what's the best actual place for them to work and in what percentage of time. So maybe 1 to 2 days per week in the office, or 3 to 4 days per week, and so on. And then we would usually layer that data with some individual colleague data to understand, again, how will individuals thrive within a different model. So it could be that your role could be done quite well remotely, but you personally will thrive better in an office environment. So for us, it's combining those two sets of data for a leader to then have a better insight into what's going to be the best sustainable model going forward. So it's not just about getting a headline 3 days per week in the office. It's about really understanding, with the makeup of my workforce and the way that people are going to thrive, this is the breakdown of how we will spend our time. And from that, then there's different decisions that can be made around real estate and the configuration of space and so on. But the starting point is taking that data-driven approach. So that's the getting the working model right. If you go on to the next slide, Brian, please, it's about thinking about what will people be doing in the future. So I just thought that the way to bring this to life best was maybe to talk through a client example that we have, which is Siemens, where they recognize that of their 300,000 colleagues in the workforce, about 30,000 roles were going to become obsolete within the next 5 years. So rather than running a massive redundancy program and then having to recruit in new people for these new types of data analyst type roles and project management roles, they defined what the roles were going to be and then set up a kind of a self-service app where all colleagues could log in, do a few ability assessments, personality questionnaires, interest inventories, and so on, and they would get immediate feedback as to what types of new roles might they be suited to, and in order to position them to take advantage of those new roles, what learning and development would they need to do. So what I suppose this was allowing people to do is get a sense of what does the future hold and how can I position myself to best take advantage of the roles that are coming in the future. So I suppose again it's about creating some clarity for people and giving them the ability to self-direct, to take advantage of the opportunities that were coming next. And one of the results was the uptake in training went from about 88% to 95%. So people really appreciated and took advantage of that. And then just finally, if you move on to the next slide, Brian, the how we work. So again, you know, we've talked about hybrid workforce. Well, what does that mean for how I interact with colleagues? And Neil in his toolkit talked a lot about some of the skills that are going to need to change in how we manage ourselves and how we manage how we interact with other people. And so I suppose when we're thinking about the how, on the left-hand side, this digital readiness is thinking about how do individuals within a workforce really understand and really, I suppose, have the skills to navigate through the digital world of work. And then on the right-hand side, thinking about, well, what is it that the leaders are doing? How are they including people? How are they creating a kind of an inclusive culture within the organization to make sure that within a hybrid model, people are not feeling excluded, left out, or ignored or becoming invisible? So I suppose in recognition of the fact that hybrid workforces are going to require both individuals and leaders to behave differently in order to get those amazing advantages around productivity and collaboration and engagement, we need to make sure that both individuals are set up and understand what those skills are, and leaders are set up and supported in developing the skills of the new working world, understanding what the definition of those behaviours are and how they need to learn and develop and create those for themselves. So I suppose that's my key three themes around the what, the where, and the how. And I hope there's some useful insights for you on that. And maybe, Peter, I'll hand back to you now at the end of my talk.